After the fall of France in 1940, the Catholic Church welcomed Marshal Pétain as the country's leader.
His words rang out. Pétain is France, and France is Pétain.
Yet within the clergy, some protested when the regime began rounding up Jewish people.
Jews are men and women, foreigners are men and women.
War has been declared. This is a public war.
Words and texts that encouraged the resistance.
People speaking out in public broke that shameful silence.
In the heart of Toulouse, the Catholic Institute welcomes students of literature, law, philosophy and theology. An intellectual centre in the so-called Pink City, it played an essential role in sheltering refugees from 1940 onwards.
It was a highly original centre of resistance, particularly for non-violent resistance, with key figures such as Rector Bruno de Saliege and librarian Aimé Georges Martimor, who protected Jewish refugees, political opponents, Gaullists, communists and Spanish Republicans. It was a meeting place that allowed networks to be formed, which incorporated very different political ideas.
The Institute's position contrasted with the Catholic circles in Vichy France, influenced by the royalist and anti-Semitic intellectual Charles Maurras, who welcomed the fall of France as what he called a divine surprise. The library has a registry of readers who visited during the occupation. While the status of Jews limited their access to university, among other things, they were very well represented here.
Mrs. Lieberman, born in Poland, Mr. Abraham Weissman, enrolled in January 1942, Mrs. Grumash Ursula, born in Berlin, Grabina Benjamin, born in Warsaw, and one of our most famous former students, Leo Goldenberg, known as Leo Hamon in the resistance, who would become a minister under General de Gaulle after the war. Some were offered a student card. The student card or library card would then be used to make fake ID papers. And as time went on, they built up a clandestine identity, enabling them to stay in Toulouse at first, and then perhaps to hide in religious centres a little further away if the alarm was sounded.
For some, the alarm sounded as soon as the Germans invaded in May 1940, sending millions of people into exile. After the armistice in June, France was divided into two zones, one occupied by the German army, the other run by the Vichy regime, headed by Marshal Pétain. Many Jewish families found refuge in this so-called free zone.
My name is Daniel Raab. My first name used to be David, but since I was born in Paris in 1941, it wasn't a very good idea to be called David.
The Raab family decided to leave Paris, heading to the countryside outside of Toulouse, specifically Boulogne-sur-Gesse, where they were welcomed by headmaster Charles Suron.
For me, he was a multifaceted, colorful character, a mountain climber and an intellectual from the Pyrenees, who pursued his career in the education system. And when the war broke out, he stood up for what he believed in. Not only did he join the resistance, but he also saved Jewish families.
Daniel Raab requested that Charles Suron be recognized as righteous among the nations for saving his life and that of his family. Suron's name now features on the Midi-Pyrénées region's memorial stele for those who saved Jewish people.
Charles Suron, mayor of Boulogne-sur-Gesse. You had the idea?
Yes, my brother and sister signed it.
What I like about him is that he represents a very important professional sector among the righteous, teachers. He got involved in political life.
Yes, he was a teacher, then he was mayor, regional councillor and senator.
Plenty of people risked their lives to save Jews in this region, where many of the internment camps were located, and the first deportations from the southern zone began from these very camps.
All the camps were far from the towns, with the exception of the Noé and Recebedou camps in our region, which were 20 kilometers from Toulouse. The only time the local people saw anything was during the deportations, when they had to be taken out of the camps to the nearest railway stations, first on foot, then by vehicle.
The first witnesses to these deportations were the Jewish, Christian and secular volunteers who helped the refugees in the camps. Among them, women who were close to the Archbishop of Toulouse, Monseigneur Saliege.
These successive reports reached Saliege and led to the famous letter of August 23, 1942. News of it even reached the authorities in Vichy.
The Vichy regime ostensibly relied on the clergy to uphold its nationalist movement, whose motto was work, family, homeland. When the French state got wind of the Archbishop's letter, it did everything in its power to censor it, to no avail.
Dear brothers, there is a Christian morality, there is a human morality. In our diocese, horrifying scenes have taken place in the camps of Noé and Recebedou. Jews are men and women, foreigners are men and women. These attacks against them cannot be permitted. They are our brothers, like so many others. A Christian soul cannot forget this.
This letter, read in all the churches in the region, was a powerful moment, breaking the silence and the complicity of Catholic institutions.
There were two major effects. The first was that all deportations in France stopped for 3 months, and in the south for almost 5 months. And the second effect was that Catholic organizations, convents, monasteries and schools were told to save families, children, to save Jews.
Saliege's letter was passed on by the resistance and reached readers as far away as London and even America. But it didn't stop Vichy from its continued collaboration with the Nazis. On August 26, 1942, the French police organized a major roundup of foreign Jews in the Free Zone. More than 1,000 people were sent to the Vénissieux camp near Lyon, where they were sorted before deportation.
On the screening commission, the French government was represented, of course, but as it couldn't do the job on its own, it enlisted the help of certain associations to do the screening. For example, unaccompanied children could not be deported. A pregnant woman could not be deported. A sick person could not be deported.
On the night of August 28th to 29th, 1942, the largest rescue operation of Jewish children in France took place. Their parents agreed and knew that they would never see their children again.
They filled in a certificate saying they were abandoning their children, and signed it in such a way that the children no longer had a father or mother. It meant they couldn't be deported. And 108 children were saved in this way.
The operation was run by Amitié Chrétienne, a group of Protestants and Catholics under the patronage of Cardinal Gerlier, Archbishop of Lyon. 2 years earlier, the cleric had declared his support for Marshal Pétain, who'd been presented as France's saviour.
His words rang out. Pétain is France, and France is Pétain. Cardinal Gerlier welcomed the arrival of the new regime, since the Vichy regime that was being set up was ostensibly inspired by Catholicism and a desire to restore Catholicism in France.
But the roundups in the summer of 1942 marked a break in the cardinal's relationship with the regime, leading to his confrontation with the prefect of Lyon, Alexandre Angeli.
There's a well-known moment when Cardinal Gerlier received a phone call in his office from the prefect Angeli, who demanded the children be delivered, to which Cardinal Gerlier replies, "You can go up to Fouvières, but you won't get the children."
This scene was recounted to the resistance and became a rallying cry throughout Lyon, a wake-up call imploring others to act.
The cardinal said to the prefect, "You won't get the children. War has been declared. This is a public war. The Church of France is standing up to the despicable racist buffoon. French people of all political stripes, of all creeds, listen to your conscience. Don't let innocent people be handed over to the executioners.
The attic of the Evangelical Church on Rue de la Lanterne was one of the hiding places offered by Protestants in Lyon.
This is the room where the Jews slept. Beds were set up here. They never stayed very long. They were immediately smuggled into Switzerland through secret networks.
There were networks for smuggling people into Switzerland.
There's also this peculiar detail. This door that opens out onto a terrace overlooking the roofs of the houses next door. And this is where refugees could escape to the Rue du Temple in the event of a police raid.
At the time, the church was helmed by Roland de Pury, a pastor who'd been an outspoken critic of Nazism since the 1930s.
He said the words that went down in the history books and live on in the memories of many Protestants to this day. France would be better off dead than to sell itself, but a France that betrays the hopes placed in it by the oppressed, a France that sells its soul and abandons its call, would no longer be France.
Those words were to cost him dearly when the Nazis started hunting down resistance fighters in 1943.
On Sunday, May the 30th, 1943, Pastor Roland de Pury was about to step into the pulpit when the Gestapo arrived and arrested him, just as he was about to celebrate the baptism and confirmation of around 15 people. That's when he was imprisoned at Fort-Montluc.
Roland de Pury spent 5 months in a cell at Fort-Montluc. He only escaped death thanks to a prisoner exchange, but others were not so lucky, like the rector and 3 priests from the Catholic Institute in Toulouse, who were deported in 1944. More than 2,000 men and women of the cloth were sent to the camps. Most of them never returned.